Hey, what's going on, y'all? I'm Akila Beats, aka Ak, and I'll show you how to make beautiful pain melodies with vocals, and I'll actually explain the whole process of making a pain sample. Starting off with the piano, you can really get anyone, but I'm just getting the glass piano from Spitfire Audio, which is also Labs, which is a free plugin. Then for pain melodies, everyone always gets stuck up doing the exact same progressions, so I'm gonna show y'all a pretty unique one that I use a lot. All it is the 1, 7, 6, 5 progression, and all these numbers are referring to is just the notes in the scale, which I won't be going over in this video, but definitely I would check out some music theory videos to understand a little bit more. But for our sake, the C sharp is the 1, C is the 7, A sharp is the 6, G sharp is the 5. However, what I'm sure you've noticed is that the actual chords aren't really changing, and it's just the bass notes. This is a really good technique you can use in really any sample. All I'm doing is I'm staying with this one chord, which in this is really just a C sharp major, but I'm just inverting this G sharp up top an entire octave down. Like I said, this is a great technique, and it's not just for pain samples, but for this, I just did it to give it a little more full sound and make it feel a little more warm and not as high up top. It's also very important to make sure that the velocities are pretty low. As you can see, these are like halfway, some of them are even lower, and all this will do will give it a lot more subtle, airy, and melodic feel, which will make it just feel softer and a lot more pretty. As for the actual notes in the melody, this is going to get a tad pedantic and music theory-ish, but bear with me. These tips will help you with samples that not even just for pain, but it will just change the way you look at making samples and making melodies. So first, making a melody is all about tension and release. That's how you're going to make a very pretty melody. You're going to have some points where it's very consonant, not a lot of dissonance, not a bunch of tension. Then you're going to have times where there are. So for example, the progression we're doing here is just... And to get into this, you can hear that the very first chord, that's going to be very, very constant. There's not any tension. This is just a C sharp major chord. But then as you go down one, you can hear there's a lot more tension, and that's because this C and this C sharp, there's a lot of tension there, because if you put this C sharp an octave down, it's really just a half note away, and it's causing a bunch of tension. But then we're just going to go down one more, and all this is an A sharp minor 7 chord, and you can hear that it has a little bit of dissonance, but it's pretty constant. So now to create a bunch of tension, you just want to go to the 5 chord. Anytime you're making a melody, if you go to the 5 chord, that's going to bring you very well back to that first one, because that's just how, Western music theory works. The 5 chord always wants to come back to the 1. Then you can see we're going from the A sharp minor 7 to this. You can hear that D sharp. That really wants to come back to... So you can see there, I'm just creating a lot of tension and release, and that's really how you make this beautiful melody. As for the effects, I'm using my very typical chain. I'm just using some EQs to cut out the lows. Then I'm also using an effect rack. Again, going to guitar, crystal choir preset. And again, this is just going to give it a very high, airy feel. I'm also using a fruity flanger, and then also reverb, cut out the lows. And that's really all the effects I use for any of the sounds on this entire track. For the guitar, I'm just doing very simple runs in the progression. As you can see, this is just C sharp to D. Then here, I'm just going up in the scale, C sharp, D sharp, F to G sharp. And really, you don't need to do anything crazy with the pain. For something where you're going to add vocals, you need to leave a lot of space for those. So you just need to have little subtle ear candy moments in there, which is all I'm doing with these very low velocity guitars. This is the same thing for the pad, where I'm using the Sweetwater pad. And this is a sound that I use in basically every single one of my pain melodies. And as you can see, it's just following the chord progression of what I'm playing in the main melody, which is C sharp, C, A sharp, G sharp. And then last, just to emphasize this idea of adding ear candy, I just have a cymbal and a reverse cymbal. And then I have a bass called Fox. And all this is doing is following the bass of the chord progression that I'm playing. But now we can get into the vocals. There's so many ways to find vocals. You can use Splice, YouTube, looking up songs by female pop singers, things like that. So just choose your favorite way to find them. So when I get my vocals, I try to find the key first, and I just do this by playing this because I've trained my ear enough to do it. But you can just put it on some website. There are plugins for it like Auto Key, and you can very easily find the key of the vocal. And then when I'm pitching my vocals, I never want to go above 500 cents or below 300. If you're going above that mark, it'll sound kind of chipmunky, and if you go below it, it'll sound just not very good. It will sound very muddy. So I try to stay within that range. These particular vocals were in A sharp major and I'm in C sharp major. So I just had to go here, pitch it up from 0 cents to 300 cents. And then also I had to find the BPM. The BPM was already listed, and on 99% of samples, it's going to be like that. But if you're trying to find one, you can really just go up here, go to the tap tempo, and just play along to the vocal sample, and you'll eventually find what BPM it is. Then, as you can see here, I chopped it up a little bit just to fit a little more onto the grid, because these vocals aren't always going to be perfectly on beat. Then for my effect rack, of course, I'm using a little bit of auto tune just to make it a little more on note, because not all the notes are perfectly sung. Retune speed is not super fast though, it's on 16, and I have the humanize up a little bit. I have an EQ. This is my classic. I go to my EQ radio, and then for this I'm pulling up the high just a little bit to give a little more airiness and breath to it. And then I have a very simple EQ, again just pulling up the low cut knob, turning down the decay time a little bit from 4 to about 3.1, then putting the mix up pretty high.
Holding me a wound to close, but I leave the whole thing open. Holding me a wound to close, but I leave the whole thing open.
Lastly is the arrangement, which is very underlooked when you're making samples. What I always recommend is starting off very subtle, then adding in more elements as it goes on. So as you can see here, I really just have this piano, and I have the cymbal and reverse cymbal in the vocals. This is just to give a very light start to it. But then after 8 bars, you want to introduce some more things. Here I'm doing everything, so I have the bass, the pad, the guitar, and even the cymbal again is hitting. And this will give the sense that the sample is always building up to something more. Think of it the exact same way you'd make a beat. You wouldn't just want to introduce everything at the start and then cut it off really abruptly. You want to make sure that it's always building, or that there's always some sense of building up some tension and releasing it with the dynamics of the entire beat. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate a like or even a sub. And every single week I'll be posting more stuff, YouTube shorts, and also some YouTube videos, especially on how to make pain melodies.